wish I could say I had some part of this wonderful documentary. I didn't. It was produced by an amazing team, Juan Devis and his team. So I just want to thank you again, congratulate you on superb work. Thank you. I also want to remind people that City Rising, the 1-hour version, the TV-friendly version, will air and Tuesday, September 19th at 8 p.m. But most of all, it will be on the web. All 6 webisodes that you've seen will be watchable at any time, anywhere, kcet.org/cityrising. So I think this will have a long and impactful life. Isela Gracian. Isela is president of the East LA Community Corporation. She's an authority on advancing equitable community development and anti-displacement leadership. She's been at ELAC for 12 years. She's overseeing their job training program, and she has served as director of community organizing. Since 2010, she's also led the organization's strategic and operational planning. She was appointed to the California Women's Policy Institute as a fellow in 2006-2007 for her cutting-edge work on solutions to community issues. She's a graduate of UC Davis. Welcome, Isela. Also with us is Robin Hughes. Robin is CEO of Abode Communities. Abode is an LA nonprofit that designs, develops, manages, operates affordable housing with supportive services. The organization has developed 40 residential mixed-use communities. Over 8,000 California residents live in Abode housing with support from Beyond Homes, which provides the resident services. Robin has served on numerous boards, including chair of the Affordable Housing for the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco. She's been on the LA City Planning Commission for 4 years. It goes on and on. You can read more about her in the material they handed out. And she was named Champion of Affordable Housing by the National Real Estate Investor magazine. And I had the pleasure many years ago of taking a tour of Abode Communities, and they are beautiful, clean, wonderful properties. Our third panelist is Tran Nguyen. Tran works with the Alameda County Public Health Department's Place Matters Initiative. The initiative advances community-driven policies and system changes that affect health and racial equity. She was formerly the editor of Color Lines magazine, where she advanced the award-winning independent reporting and commentary on racial justice issues and community organizing around the country. She's the author of the book, We Are All Suspects Now, Untold Stories of Immigrants After 9/11. Tran holds a master's in public policy from UC Berkeley's Goldman School of Public Policy. Welcome all of you to this very special event. We are going to focus our conversation on solutions. But before I ask each of them how their work contributes to solutions, I can't help but want to get their reaction to the documentary because it was so amazing. So I want to ask them each briefly, what scene or character resonated most with you? And I'll start with yourself.
Good evening, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. And I think before I share that, I just want to acknowledge the work of all of my peers and colleagues, a lot of folks that are here and the organizing, and that this isn't a new issue, that this has been going on for decades. I remember when we started engaging in this conversation, I went with a friend in the Central Valley and he gave me a book that was from the 1970s around gentrification. So thank you all for being peers and working on these issues with us. What stood out for me was Araceli's story, because a lot of folks have my direct cell phone. Being with an organization where I came out of our community organizing, they still have a direct line to me. And just getting those calls of folks that have been looking for a place and they have a day or two left and they're calling and seeing what we can do to help them with housing. And they're, at that point, it's so limited. So Araceli's story is unfortunately that of many people, and that's tonight from the documentary that's really sticking with me.
Thank you. Yes, Robin, what scene or character do you remember most?
Well, I will have to agree with my friend here, but for a very different reason. And I think the most striking moment was, here it is, a day before she's being evicted, and she's cleaning her kitchen.
Yeah.
And she's cleaning her kitchen. And I don't know how many times I've gone into really bad, slumly, affordable housing, and I go into the units and I see just the dignity and pride people still have at home, and that's her home. So it was really amazing to experience that with her. But ultimately, even her words about what she wanted for herself and her family. And it's what every mom, every parent wants. They want a safe place to call home, and it was very touching.
Tran, which scene or character did really hit you?
Yeah, I have to also start by saying thank you to everyone involved with this film. Just amazing, and I'm so honored, to be here, to come back to LA, where I'm from, even though I live in Oakland. And I agree, Aracella's story and the scene where she's sweeping. And I don't know if it was in the cut that I saw where she's in tears. And she talks about, I will do whatever it takes to own, right? And as a mom and as a child of immigrants and refugees, I really viscerally connect to that. And yet at the same time, I think that captures, right, that tension, that conflict where, we want what's best for our family. And that's sold to us as owning. And nothing's wrong with that. That's a dream that, I've had, everybody has, but it's out of reach for so many people, right? So I think this film and all of those stories really drive home that issue of how can we transfer those benefits that homeowners get, to the rest of us, to renters who are more likely than not going to be renters for, me for the rest of my life probably. So, so we'll get into all of those issues, but that was the scene that really hit me.
And understanding how deep the roots to homeownership exclusion go, it was very, very enlightening. We often think, well, if you work hard, save, you'll own a home. If you don't, you don't. Not true. It's stacked against you from the beginning, one way or the other, stacked in your favor or against you. I want to ask, in terms of what you personally do, because the solution to affordable housing is really multifaceted, as we saw, but as far as what you do, what part of the solution do you contribute to?
So at East LA Community Corporation, we have a 3-strategy approach around neighborhood transformation. The real estate development and community development, which has affordable housing. We do community organizing, so you saw one of my team members up there, Carla, who's our director of organizing, and we do wealth building, which we do different programs around economic stability. So we've had, for the past 2 decades, that the organization has been in existence, really looking at ownership. And right now, we're in a phase of looking at different strategy around ownership and looking at the land trust model, as well as cooperative housing, and really looking to impact this notion of how do we own land, how do we steward the land. And this is new to us. Actually, most of my team tonight is probably wrapping up a meeting out in Boyle Heights around community land trust and engaging in that conversation. So that we can really be able to have our first land trust in Boyle Heights. So as a neighborhood-based community development organization, we're really looking to see the first land trust in Boyle Heights.
So out of both communities, I think our primary way of addressing the affordable housing crisis and gentrification is through the production of affordable housing. And you saw that we were partnering with, for example, Trust South LA on the Rolling Curtains project, which we can talk about a little more later. But that is what we think is one of the most critical things to addressing the housing crisis that we have, but also just gentrification. That one of the ways we feel to combat is by producing more housing and producing more housing that is affordable for the residents. But we also engage a lot in public policy because we know that the only way we're going to address this issue and get, whether it's more resources to produce affordable housing or good land use policy that's going to include as opposed to exclude housing that's affordable for all is a really important thing. And then I think thirdly, the thing that we do is engage with community groups like Trust South LA. We're working on a project in Boyle Heights and partner with ELAC on the community outreach component. But that is a really critical part of what we do. And I wish we could replicate what we did with Trust South LA on Rolling Curtains and every single one of our projects, but it definitely takes a different set of resources to make that happen.
Tran, how does what you do feed into and contribute to solutions here?
So you might wonder why a health department is here speaking about gentrification and housing and displacement. But we work on the social conditions that affect health, and housing is one of the strongest primary drivers of health. You heard Dr. Aiton talk in the film about the life expectancy gap. We talk about that as, people live sicker and shorter lives, largely determined by the opportunities and the resources that they have, such as housing. Another key thing that we look at is children's health is a really strong indicator of how our society's conditions affect a population. And infant mortality, infant low birth rates, all of those are very tied to housing. Housing stress has been found to be a strong link between mothers and then their children at birth outcomes. And those outcomes in the public health field, we've found, will then affect people throughout their lives. Right? It's a cumulative risk effect. And so you have cognitive issues, behavioral issues, chronic disease issues, school performance, things that add up to costs for families, individuals, but also societal cost. And so we try to frame that, and I think one of the things that really struck me in the film was looking at these ideas about housing, right, as a business model or as versus a human right. And one other thing I want to add to that is the need, I think, to understand housing, pull housing back as an investment, a social investment, just as we would education or jobs creation. That housing is a necessity to stabilize families and communities so that we have a sustainable, productive society as a whole. And that's where I think our health department tries to contribute that analysis and that advocacy. One other thing I would say is that we're working on trying to advance the idea that public resources need to be invested in keeping people in place. Most people are renters in our cities. And right now, you saw in the film rising rents, rising evictions. Well, our county has passed a housing bond in this last election. We passed Measure JJs, you saw in Oakland, and we also passed as a county resources for anti-displacement services that actually hopefully will go to universal eviction defense. And cash aid, one-time cash aid for people that it could help, keep them in place if they had assistance to pay a back rent or a back mortgage, just to get them through that rough time, and then they can stay in place. And that prevents this, this spiraling of homelessness or, commuting 2 hours to your low-wage job. Things that are just bad for our region and our society as a whole. So those are some of the things that we're working on right now.